Hello, welcome to the chair. I'm going to play this quick instrumental. Eddie Money passed away last week. Just wanted to give a remembrance to him and his music. And just Dad passed away too young, and for sure his music will go on forever. And his songs, which are very notable and popular, and been used on commercials and all that. I've sung karaoke to it, if you can believe that. Uh, Anyway, this is the chair, and this will be an NFL edition. And I'm going to review week two and preview week three. Now, week three already happened. Well, one game already started it up, and we'll get to that when we do. I want to mention for week two that I went, for me, a terrible 10-6. There were just some upsets that happened. There were some games you really can't explain what happened. They just did, and that's how it. And so it goes. But let's get to it. So week two started with Buccaneers and the Panthers in rainy Carolina. The game after a quarter, I believe, uh, was delayed because of lightning and thunder in the area, and it was never more 6 point game. Cam Newton looked awful. The Bucks did just enough to win offensively, missed some opportunities. The Buccaneers, the Panthers. McCaffrey was there, but it seemed Cam was just overthrowing everyone that he was throwing to. It was really bad. Panthers had a chance to tie the game at the end, but they did not. They sent McCaffrey on a wildcat and had Cam outside like he was nothing. And maybe that's foreshadowing things. I don't know. But quick recap: Cam Newton did not throw for a touchdown or a pick. Jameis Winston for Tampa had one touchdown and no interceptions. Uh, Goodwin had a great game with receiving uh, for Tampa. Mike Evans had 61 yards. Goodwin had 121 yards and the one touchdown that Carolina threw for. Now, it's funny, I mentioned that Cam Newton overthrew his targets and was getting pressured, but he threw for 333 yards. It's just weird how that goes. McCaffrey had 37 rushing yards. Olsen had 110. Samuel with 91, and DJ Moore with 89. McCaffrey 16. But the story was Cam Newton and how injured he still looks after an off season of saying that he's better, that he feels fresh, but obviously something is wrong. But maybe in a different weather situation, um, see what happens. So for that game, somehow I got it right. So I'll take that W. So let's go to Detroit, where the Chargers played the Lions. I know my friend Mo Dog was there. He lives in the well state of Michigan. I don't know how close to Detroit. Subscribe to me, Mo Dog, and I'll watch some of your video. He was taking some uh, shots from the game, so that was pretty cool to see. Philip Rivers for the Chargers didn't throw for a touchdown, but he had a pick, and there were a lot of touchdowns called back or big plays called back for the Chargers because of flags. Rivers did end up throwing for 293 yards, and again that one pick. Eckler, the running back for Chargers, had 66 yards. Jackson 59. Keenan Allen had 98 yards. Mike Williams, who did get hurt, 83 yards. Eckler was 67 out of the backfield. Uh, Eckler again having a great game. in place of Melvin Gordon, who probably won't come back this year. I don't know, for the Chargers. Matthew Stafford, on the other hand, had 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He's one of those quarterbacks that will try anything just to get something going, pretty much. Stafford, 245 yards with 2 picks and 2 touchdowns. A couple of running backs had 41 and 30. One named Johnson, the other named Johnson in the backfield. Galladay with 117 yards receiving. Johnson, uh, 47, and then Jones Jr., who made a big catch late in the game, at 43. Now, Hawkins' son, their tight end, I thought was going to have a better game, but he had one reception for 7 yards. Jesse James had 3 receptions for 18 yards. It's kind of the student and teacher there in Detroit, and I got that game wrong. I really thought the Chargers would win it, but again, penalties and all that just really ruined their chances. This game was a shocker coming up. It was Indianapolis going to Tennessee. Both teams really shaky. The whole division real shaky, to be honest with you. It came down to a defensive stop by the Colts on fourth down with 13 seconds remaining. And again, Vinatieri was not solid. Missed a key field goal that would have made it a breeze for the Colts. Jacoby Brissett had 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. He threw for only 146 yards. Wilkins in the backfield had 82 yards rushing. Mack with only 51. T.J. Hilton with 43 yards. Ebron with 25 and Rodgers with 24. Jack Doyle, the tight end, with only 21 yards. It was one of those games where for me, if you had a Colt fantasy player, you regretted starting him, and Mack was one of mine. For Mariota, 1 touchdown and no interceptions, 154 yards receiving. We'll get to him pretty soon about the Thursday night game that just played today. For some of you, it would be for tomorrow. Uh, Derrick Henry had 81 yards rushing. Mariota had 32 himself. Delaney Walker receiving had 39, the tight end. Chris Davis had 38 yards. That's all we need to say about that game. It was a struggle. Every game is a struggle for an AFC South team. It seems like, and it's just odd. This one was a no doubter, even though it was a 10-point ending. It was 31-21, Dallas over Washington. Prescott threw for 269 yards and 3 easy touchdowns. They had Josh Norman in circles in the secondary. It was really, really bad. Prescott did throw for an interception. Elliott with 111 yards rushing. It was, if you're a Cowboy fan, it was good to see him on the ground. Prescott had 69 yards rushing. Even Cobb got in the act with a couple of carries with 11 yards. Gallup with 68 yards, Cooper with 44, Smith with 74, Whitten with 25, and Cobb with 24, Jarwin with 22, all receiving yards. Now with Washington, they had Case Keenum going for him. In case, let's just say, he's bound to have his job taken by the rookie, but we'll see what happens with that as Hoskins is there. But we'll see what Washington does. It was bad for Washington. Keenan had okay numbers. It was 221 yards with 2 touchdowns. Adrian Peterson, after being benched for game one, I guess he said something about the front office, and we never knew. I never knew what happened. Why he didn't play week one in Philadelphia, but now we know. He had 10 carries and 25 yards. Receiving, McLaurin had 62, Thompson with 48 out of the backfield, Quinn with 36, and Davis with 29, Richardson 16, Sprinkle with 11. I got his Sprinkle. Uh, so with that being said, Dallas ran over Washington. It wasn't a 10-point game. It wasn't even close to that. Now this game, and I got those two right for sure. Or no, I got the Colt game wrong, but I got the Cowboy game right. Now this game I had right. It was Seattle going to Pittsburgh, and real close game. The Seahawks won 28-26. As my phone goes, okay, Russell Wilson had 3 touchdowns, but no interceptions. He threw for an even 300 yards. He was 28 for 35 passing, if you can believe that. That is efficiency, especially with the way that the uh, the passing game is all over the NFL now. The rushing was pretty good on the ground. 10 carries, 15 carries for Penny and Carson, 62 yards and 60 for Carson. And Wilson had 22 himself. Lockett had 79 rushing. Metcalf had a late touchdown, 61 yards on the day. Turner with 54, Disley with 50, and Carson out of the backfield, and Procise with 13. Carson had 27 yards. It was one of those back and forth games, and for the Steelers, now Ben Roethlisberger, unfortunately, for a Steeler fan out there, he ended up leaving the game after he threw a pass. He reached for his elbow, and it's just one of those games, one of those things where uh, you're not the same, so you can't throw as well. So Ben ended up uh, had 15 passes, 75 yards, and then he left. It was, I guess, a frightful thing to see if you're a Steeler fan, being without him all this time. Been with him and now without him for the whole season. So Mason Rudolph came in. He had 112 yards passing and 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. Imagine filling in for big shoes like that. Connor, nothing on the ground, 33 yards, 11 carries. It was disheartening to see if you're still a fan for sure. Juju had 84 yards receiving. Donald the tight end, 38. Washington with 23. Uh, Johnson with 17. Samuels for 12. And Connor for 12 yards receiving. I got that game right somehow. I told Todd, the part of the grinds here, that they'll win by a field goal, and they ended up winning by 2. But it wasn't by a field goal; it was a late touchdown, I believe. So we go up to the NFC North. It was the battle between the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. We came into the game with a good sense of who would be who and what would be what. You figured the Viking defense would be good. Figured the offense of Rodgers and his head coach would not be on the same ground yet because, hey, Rodgers wants to do this, but uh, LaFleur wants to do this. And so they had a little thing going on the sideline the whole game, pretty much. It was just one of those things that happens when you play, when you start to uh, have a career with someone else as a coach. Speaking of, Kirk Cousins had his regular day, I would say. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 230 yards passing. Those interceptions became big. Cook had a great day on the ground, 154 yards and a touchdown, one of the bright spots of the Vikings. Thielen had 75 yards receiving. Beebe had 61. Diggs only had 49 yards, and out of the backfield, Cook had 37. Rudolph with just 9 yards. They're not looking his way, and part of that probably is his health, but part of that they need him pretty much. Rodgers had only 289 yards passing, two touchdowns. Jones on the ground for Green Bay, 116 yards. He had a wonderful game. Scored a touchdown. Adams Devontae on my fantasy team had 106 yards. Uh, Allison ended up getting a touchdown for Green Bay, and Williams as well receiving, but none for Adams. And I got that game wrong, so that was disheartening for sure because I believed in Minnesota's defense wreaking havoc, and they didn't as much. Final score was 21-16, but it was a double digit lead for Green Bay throughout, and I made sure to be watching that game. Now we go to the Buffalo Bills in New Jersey to play the New York Giants. The Bills didn't have to travel far for all these games so far. They went to New Jersey last week to beat the Jets. They go to New Jersey again and they defeated the New York Giants 28-14 and got this game right because I believed in the defense of the Bills and I believe in the non offense for Eli and the Giants. And more news about Eli coming up. Josh Allen, touchdown, no picks. He's just managing the game, 253 yards passing. Frank Gore had 68 yards, Singletary with 57. Allen had 21 himself. Beasley for receiving had 83 yards. John Brown had 72. McKenzie with 40. And Gore with 15 out of the backfield. Knox with 18. But no sign of. Yeah, there he is. Okay, yeah. Cole Beasley had 83 yards on that. Now we go to the Giants. Eli had 250 yards, one touchdown, two interceptions. Barkley had 107 yards rushing and one touchdown. And receiving, Fowler the third had 51 yards. Ingram had 48. Jones had a touchdown reception, 38 yards altogether. It was an ugly one for the Giants. They were lucky to even score 14 points in that game. It was just one of those things, and we'll get to them uh, when we do our predictions here. So the Jaguars and Texans played each other, the division rivals, if you can call it that. And it was. So we get back to the score. There we go. Texans won late. The Jaguars, they kept it close throughout the game, and then the thing that got me at the end of it, as Nick Foles is not there for Jacksonville. Minshaw's in now for Jacksonville, and he had touchdown and no picks. But at in the end of the game, threw a touchdown, Minshaw, and then instead of letting his hot hand ride, they ran it up the middle with Fournette, and he got stopped and losing by two. And I would have let him, or by one. I would have let him. I would have either took the extra point or said it's all in Minshew's game. It's his ball. So Jacksonville ends up losing by one. Minshaw the third at 213 yards passing, one touchdown. Minshaw also ran for 56 yards. Fournette only had 47. Conley had 73 yards receiving. Chark had 55 and a touchdown. Fournette with 40 yards out of the backfield. O'Shaughnessy had 28. Swam with 14. And Westbrook with only 3 yards receiving. For Houston, they were lucky to pull out the win. Deshaun Watson had no touchdown, no picks, threw for 159 yards. You could tell it was a defensive game. Carlos Hyde had 90 yards rushing. Hopkins with 40 yards receiving. Fuller with 40 as well. Stills with 38. So that was one of those games that if you love defense, you're all on it. But man, if you love and you need your fantasy, if you need your offense going, man, you're like, what the hell? Houston, what's going on here? Now, this game coming up, I did get right. I got the Houston game right as well, but with Baltimore and Arizona in hot Baltimore, the Ravens ended up winning 23-17. It got close at the end, but then Baltimore pulled away. Uh, Kyler Murray, the rookie quarterback, threw for 349 yards, but no touchdowns or picks. David Johnson only ran for 14 yards, 2 yards per carry. Kirk, the receiving, had 114 yards. Fitzgerald with 104. He's putting up numbers this year. It's odd to see, but it's good to see. Bird had 45. And then Michael Crabtree, who played in Baltimore last year, had 13 yards receiving. I want to see how he'll fit in the offense as they signed him late, remember. Well, Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, he didn't have, crazy game, but he had 272 yards and 2 touchdowns, a great quarterback rating of 104. He also ran for 120 yards. Uh, Mark Ingram had 47 yards. Andrews, their great tight end, had 112 receiving yards. Brown had 86. Ingram with 30. Boyle with 14. Boykin with 11. Hill with 10. Snead with only 5. Uh, so that game, like I said, if Arizona had more firepower, they would have probably tied it, and it would have probably came down to a field goal, to be honest with you. Uh, but the defense held for Baltimore. Okay, so unfortunately for the 49ers, as they went to Cincinnati, uh, they lost Joe Staley for a lot of time. Uh, their left tackle, which is of course important, the blind side. That was the only negative of this game, as the 49ers went to Ohio and defeated the Bengals 41-17. Jimmy G had 297 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Breida, their running back, Matt Breida, who's had to step in because first 2 stringers are out, had 121 yards rushing. Mozart with 83. Samuel had 87 yards receiving. Goodwin with 77. Mozart with 68 and Kittle with 54. Breida with 11 out of the backfield. For Cincinnati, it was Dalton with 311 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Mixon had 17 yards. He got hurt as well. Bernard with 6. Tyler Boyd had 122 yards receiving. Ross had 112, again stepping up for the Bengals, even though in a lost cause. Let's go down to Miami in the game that, had a lot of storylines, but first game, Antonio Brown with the Patriots, and he showed out for a couple of catches. Tom Brady, two touchdowns, no interceptions. Final score ended up being 43-0 New England, as the Dolphins have now gone the year scoring 10 but giving up 106 points, I believe. Brady with 264 yards and those 2 touchdowns. Sonny Mitchell had 85 yards rushing, Burkhead with 21, White with just 10. Antonio Brown with 4 receptions, 56 yards. Edelman with 4 receptions as well, 51 yards. Burkhead with 47. Receiving, it was a share the wealth day, and um, allowing Brown to fit in. Now his future is very bleak because of the allegations against him. For sure, there'll be a civil suit, but there'll be more to come. So Ryan Fitzpatrick started the game for Miami, threw for 89 yards, but he did his thing. Fitz gonna fit. 3 picks, and then Rosen came in 97 yards and 1 pick. Neither threw a touchdown, of course. Kenyon Drake had 19 yards on the ground. Walton had 15, but that was all. Williams for the Dolphins had 63 yards. Drake had 29 out of the backfield. Smith Grant had a little bit. Hearns with worse, and Walton with worse. Galicki, the tight end, with 11 yards. It was just a really bad day. Devontae Parker, well, he had uh, 7 passes thrown to him. He didn't catch any. They're probably over the head and everywhere. Let's go to Oakland, California. And this game, it hurt, but it was expected. See behind me, I'm a Raider fan. And this one was the last installment of Kansas City coming to Oakland. It was the last game where the infield dirt of the Oakland A's was on the field of a football game. It's unique. I wouldn't say special, but it was unique because as a kid, I grew up at a park where they had softball going, but grass. So I imagine I was Tim Brown running routes, and my dad or whoever would be throwing the ball, and I would, catch it or drop it. And so that part is gone, and everybody's been past that part since 2011. Miami last time had it. Minnesota had it in the Metrodome until the Twins moved out. So it's one of those things. It was old school, but now it's gone, and then the Raiders will eventually be gone. Final score was 28-10. It could have been way worse. The Kansas City Chiefs won. Pat Mahomes put up Madden numbers again. It was 4 touchdowns, 443 yards. On the ground, LaShawn McCoy had only 23 yards, but that was just a mirage to what would happen on not on the ground, but through the air. uh, Robinson had a great game for Kansas City, 172 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. Kelsey had 107 yards, made some clutch catches over the middle for first downs, big gains. He added a touchdown as well. Hardman had a touchdown for 61. Watkins didn't have a game like last week against Jacksonville, but he had 49 yards, and Williams had 48 out of the backfield for the Raiders. Derek Carr, 198 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Josh Jacobs, again, a great effort, 12 carries for 99 yards. Carr even ratted himself, had a big leaping attempt at a first down, but missed it on the fourth down. That scared everybody. Waller, the rookie tight end for the Raiders, has 63 yards. Terrell Williams did get hurt. He's questionable. He had 46 yards himself. Carrier, the other tight end, had 33. Renfro had 30 yards receiving. And then Washington had 26 for the Raiders as they lose again to Kansas City, 28-10. Now, this game, um, in Denver with the Packers and the Broncos, the ending was really, let's just say, unofficial. um, just awkward. The Bears ended up winning by a field goal, 16-14. But in a sense, they should never got in field goal range. Time should have stopped with No seconds on the clock. Somehow 1 second was there for the field goal to be up. Broncos before that had a touchdown to lead, and then the Bears came back, had the ball away on their territory, was making passes, but not too much progress. And then a bogus roughing the passer happened, and it was one of those things like last year when Clay Matthews landed on top of Alex Smith a couple of times, and they were calling him for that. I don't like that rule. I don't like these rules they're having. But that propelled the Bears 15 more yards, and they got a pass over the middle. And somehow they got a timeout with like 1 second left, but clearly I saw 00 on the clock. So the Bears ended up, which I have no problem with, of course, because, Denver, whatever. Again, 16-14, the Bears escape. Get it? Trubisky, 120 yards with no touchdowns and no picks. Montgomery on the ground for the Bears, 62 yards. Patterson with 50. Cohen with only 18. He hasn't shown up this year so far. Tank Cohen. Receiving Robinson, a third, at 41. Sheedon had 24, as well as Broniker. Wow, I don't remember him. Gabriel with 11. Cohen with only 7. It was one of those ugly games that the first two, as my friend Tom said, the first two 14-1, but somehow the law was broken, and um, the Bears won. Flacco had 292 yards. That sounds familiar. Like last week, 1 touchdown and 1 pick. Freeman had 54 on the ground. Lindsey with 36. Sanders had a nice game with 98 yards receiving and a touchdown. Freeman 48, Sutton 40, Faint with 33, Lindsey with 30. So that's one of those games where they're going to have to go back, and the officials and everyone else going to have to wonder do we get it right? And we don't know yet if they did. Now, this next game was supposed to be a big battle, and it was coming in. It was New Orleans going to LA to play the Rams at the Coliseum, and it was a home opener for LA, and the Rams ended up winning 27-9. But the big story was Drew Brees on a pass in the first half. Was injured. He got hit by Aaron Donald trying to swipe at the ball or knock it down. And right away, Brees was looking at his thumb. He couldn't grip a football. Got it wrapped right away, and we wondered was it going to come back. But he had a helmet on at one point, and he couldn't go back in. And now he'll be out 6 weeks for sure. Teddy Bridgewater stepped in later on. Couldn't get much going. Was getting sacked a lot. Brees, before he left the game, threw for only 38 yards on an interception. Teddy Bridgewater came in, threw for 165 yards. And you figure in a spot like this, Alvin Kamara would show up, but he had 45 yards. Murray with only 7, Bridgewater with 5 himself. Michael Thomas somehow ended up with 89 yards receiving. Smith with 49, Cook with 25. And it's going to be tough sledding for the Saints. Now, I'm not saying that they're out of the division race because they're not. They play in a weak division, to be honest with you. So we'll see what happens with that. They're going to go 6 weeks without Breeze. Um, as I saw the schedule, in my opinion, they probably win 2 or 3 games out of the 6. And we'll see how sensitive his hand will be after that. For the Rams, it was a banner day offensively and defensively. Goff ended up with 283 yards passing and 1 touchdown. Gurley ran for uh, 63 yards and 37 for Brown. Cooper Cuff, who had a monster game, 120 yards receiving. Cooks with a touchdown and 74 yards. Woods with 33. Everett with 21. Higbee, who got hurt, had 21 as well. Higbee is questionable for Sunday night as we get there. Speaking of Sunday night, let's go to Atlanta. It was uh, Philly and the Falcons. Battle of the Birds. And it was Carson Wentz throwing for one touchdown and two picks. It was Matt Ryan throwing for three touchdowns and three picks. That's normally Matt Ryan. Close game throughout. Falcons pulled out the win 24-20. Carson Wentz threw for 231 yards. Again, one touchdown, two interceptions. Wentz had to leave before halftime and then came back in. I forget what the injury was, but Josh McCown came in. Great to see him again. He had 24 yards passing on five attempts for three out of five, I should say, on that. Sanders, not Barry, had 28 yards. Jordan Howard only had 18. He's not fitting in well so far for Philadelphia. Aguilar still had an issue dropping passes, but he had 107 yards receiving with one touchdown. Zach Ertz, 72 yards receiving. Hollins with 50. And it was just one of those sloppy games, but it had a great ending to it because Philly came back and almost pulled it out. But Atlanta ended up running out the clock, having Philly using their timeouts. Let's go Monday Night Football. It was ugly for the New York Jets as they hosted the Cleveland Browns, who came off an ugly loss themselves in Week 1. Final score ended up being 23-3, but it could have been 50-0, honestly. Baker Mayfield had one touchdown and one pick, threw for 325 yards. Nick Chubb had 62 on the ground. Beckham Jr. with a great game as he came back to his old stomping grounds in the NFL, playing for the Giants. Came back to New Jersey, had 161 yards receiving, and caught a long touchdown, almost 80 yards in that one. Ratley had 50 yards, Chubb with 36, Johnson with 42, Landry with 32. It was all about Odell coming back, and he did very well. Now, without Sam Darnold with the mono, and I don't know how long he'll be out, maybe a couple of weeks. But again, he's not around the facility. He's not there. So not Nick Falk, Luke Falk comes in, and he was a Washington State quarterback. Excuse me. He had 198 yards passing. But after 6 attempts, Simeon got hurt. He only had 3 yards, but it was a gruesome foot injury where it was just bad. Somehow Trevor Simeon was able to walk off on his own power, but we will see how he goes, how Falk goes for the Jets as they go along. Le'Veon Bell, who had to do everything for the Jets, it seems like throughout that he had 21 carries for 68 yards. Robbie Anderson had 81. Bell himself had 61 receiving, 10 passes. Crowder had 40 yards receiving. And that was week 2. Let's go to week 3. Quick picks here. As we got to go because Black Jesus is about to come on. Love that show. And it's like almost midnight here, so staying up. It's been a long day. Anyway, Thursday Night Football started up today, or Thursday, I should say, Thursday night. It was the Tennessee Titans at Jacksonville. Jags hosting Tennessee. Now, this game, you figure it was supposed to be easy for the Titans. It was not. As we go through the numbers, Marcus Mariota had to run for his life, and then when he ran for his life, he ran straight and into Jacksonville tacklers waiting to get him. Uh, 9 sacks the Jags tallied up against Mariota. It was a beating pretty much. 20-7 was the final. Jacksonville wins. Mariota with 304 yards somehow passing. Travis Henry. Derrick Henry had 44 yards rushing. Mariota with 34 himself. Lewis only had 13. I have Henry and Lewis on my fantasy, and they didn't do squat for me. Henry did end up scoring a touchdown. Humphrey said 93 yards receiving. Sharp with 70. Walker 64. Davis with 44. But that was it. It was a first half of rainy weather, and it was one of those things where once you get out of the weather, hopefully you can pass better, you can do better. But for Mariota, again, he was running for his life. Jacksonville, uh, Graham Minshew, two touchdown passes, 204 yards passing. Fournette had a decent game, 66 yards rushing. Uh, but if the Jags want to do anything, as the division is still up for grabs, even this early, Fournette's going to have to do way more. Shark had a touchdown and 76 yards of reception. Receiving, Westbrook with 46 yards. Conley with 30, and Fournette out of the backfield with 26. O'Shaughnessy, the tight end, with 18. Now, the story was Jalen Ramsey. He ended up getting 9 tackles, but the looming story for Jalen Ramsey is that he wants out of Jacksonville. That's been the story all week long, and it's fitting that it would be a story right on Thursday Night Football when they're playing, and that's the route he's chosen to go. So we'll watch out for that. A trade is imminent in the next 10 days, according to reports. Could be sooner, but it's not going to be like a giveaway trade. They're going to ask for a lot for him. So some team is going to have to give up, players, picks to get Jalen Ramsey. Uh, Even though he wants to break the bank, but he wants to show what he can do. So let's go the rest of week 3. As I got that game wrong, Tennessee losing to Jacksonville. The Broncos go to Green Bay. Broncos coming in. Oh, excuse me. On the records, the Titans and the Jaguars are both 1-2 now, and tied for third in that division, as the others haven't played yet. So let's go to the 0-2 Broncos and the 2-0 Packers. The Broncos are aiming to avoid their seventh straight loss if you go back to last year and how they ended up losing the last 5 games. Add Green Bay in this game. I just think their defense will shut down Joe Flacco. He'll do his little check downs, and that'll be it. This might be a game that if Green Bay protects Rodgers, that he'll go off on that secondary, and expect a big game probably for Devontae Adams. So I got Packers in that. Falcons and Colts. Now the both are 1-1. Now this is funny. Falcons have the best passing offense. Now the best passing defense, and the Colts understandably has the worst passing offense. So if you have the Falcons defense, and somehow you do, um, I put them on against the Colts here in Brissett. I have the Falcons in this. I feel like their defense, Beasley, will do great, and their secondary rejuvenated as of now. I see them winning in Indianapolis. Ravens and Chiefs. This one will maybe be explosive. It was last year between these two, if you remember. That's the game that Mahomes threw without looking, or he didn't look that way, but he threw. Like I think it was like that. And the Chiefs lead the league with an average of 407 passing yards. That's what I read coming in. Both teams are 2-0. I have the Chiefs by at least 6. You hope that Lamar Jackson can work his magic at least one more time against Kansas City, but we'll see how that goes. I know he won't be as good as that's for sure week 1. So I got Kansas City in that. The Bengals 0-2 at Buffalo 2-0. Expect that crowd to be going crazy in Buffalo. They're coming in hot after both wins in New Jersey. Uh, Now the Bengals, they can't run the ball, and they're gonna have a tough time again with the Bills defense. Bills are doing just enough. Josh Allen just managing the game, rushing himself. Frank Gore still doing his thing. He's really old and running back years, but he's still doing his thing, man. Uh, like I said, Josh Allen doing his thing. Andy Dalton, he'll struggle in this game for sure. Crowd will be raucous. I can't wait to see the environment there and all the folded tables getting crushed on by people jumping off. That's just crazy to see. So I got the Bills in that one. The Owen, let's go a little bit north of that. The Jets 0-2 going to New England Foxborough to play the Patriots, who are 2-0, of course. And this game should be really ugly for the Jets, almost like a carbon copy of the Browns game. And my guess it'd probably be like a 33-3 win over the Jets for New England in that one. Lions, who are one win, no losses, but that one tie against Arizona. They play the one-on-one Eagles. Now the rush defense of Philadelphia leads the league, and the Lions don't run well. They can pass well, but the Eagles have a great defense. So I'm gonna give it to the Eagles on that game. Now the Raiders go. Both Raiders and Vikings are 1-1. They go to Minnesota. Hello, Carlos, and good luck this week. But I'm gonna win probably. The Raiders' pass defense, of course, is the last because of the game that Mahomes had. Uh, I expect this game to be a blowout, and I'm sorry to say that, but even with Kirk Cousins not doing well, he should have a decent day if he doesn't throw picks. If he finds Thielen on a slant, or if he finds Diggs down the sideline, he should be fine. And maybe get Kyle Rudolph involved for once. I don't know. Uh, Davin Cook should have the game of his life. I know he had a good game last week, but he'll probably he'll probably be running again. For the Raiders, you just hope no injuries, and you hope that somehow they can make it a game, or win by a field goal somehow. I don't know, but I see the Vikings winning that. And oh gosh, the 0-2 Dolphins go to 2-0 Dallas, and the Cowboys are putting up crazy numbers. Uh, they average 484 yards offense right now and leads the NFC with that. And I expect that game to be at least by 40, at least by 42, and maybe 49 to 6 or something like that. I don't know. But it's supposed to be bad. Giants go into Tampa, the 0-2 Giants and the 1-1 Bucks. Big story here was Eli Manning finally getting benched, and Daniel Jones, who had a wonderful preseason, coming in to start his first start as a rookie in Tampa. Tampa with a great defense. Jameis Winston having a decent year, but nothing that says he should be going on as a starter for good going forward. But we'll see. This game should be close, and this one was tough, and the rest are pretty much tough as well. I got the Giants winning somehow. Maybe Daniel Jones can get it going and find his receivers, but we'll see because they're limited at receiving. So I'll go with the Giants, but I don't know. The 0-2 Panthers go to Arizona to play the 0-1 and 1 tie Cardinals. Cardinal defense is last in their conference, uh, but Cam Newton is always a question mark, so we wonder how he'll do. I expect McCaffrey to win the game by himself and run for at least 150 yards and receive for at least 120. And I expect the Panthers to win. The Pittsburgh Steelers life without Ben Roethlisberger, are 0-2 going to the 2-0 surprising San Francisco Santa Clara 49ers. Um, this game, it was big with Ben, but now I see the Niners winning and going to 3-0. Uh, maybe with their running attack, it won't be as well, but maybe they'll find Goodwin. And Kettle will have a breakout game, but we'll see how the Pittsburgh defense goes. For the offense, it's a stalemate right now with the Steelers offense, so we'll see how they do. But I guess the 49ers winning. Okay, both teams 1-1. Houston and the Chargers in Southern California in Carson. I got somehow the Chargers winning. Houston is shaky, but the Chargers, they have Eckler. I say Houston has a good defense, but and we'll see. This game will probably go down to a field goal, but we'll see how their field goal kicker does. If it's a punter again for the Chargers. Expect Hopkins to have a great day without Darren James in the backfield there in the secondary for the Chargers. Um, but I got the Chargers winning by a field goal. Saints and Seahawks, again, this was supposed to be one of the marquee games of the season, but the schedule just got lighter for Seattle as Breeze is not there for New Orleans. Kamara's going to have a breakout game. And then Tyson Hill's going to have some tricks up his sleeve. But I see the Seahawks improving to 3-0 and the Saints going to 1-2. I see Wilson having his day. I see the ground game being a little better, but not too much against the Saints defense. And I know Cameron Jordan wants that touchdown back that he lost. Sunday Night Football, it is the LA Rams at 2-0 going to Cleveland to play the 1-1 Browns. And a lot of people don't know this. The Rams came from Cleveland and they moved out to California in 1946. Uh, this game very tough. I don't know, and that's why they put it for Sunday night. It's supposed to be very entertaining. I guess. Depends on the secondary of the Rams and how much Odell wants to shine and Baker wants to shine, and if their running can get going with Chubb even more. Rams, they look pretty solid. They have Cup over the middle. They have Cooks going down the side. They have Woods on the end of rounds and going down the middle for big gains. I got the Rams by field goal. Monday Night Football, I got Bears and Washington. This is just trash. On trash. 1-1 Bears and the 0-2 Washington football team. Washington, their run defense is last, but Cohen is non-existent. Montgomery may have a big game against Chicago, but Cohen needs to get going for Chicago if they want to get anything, the wild card or the division. So I have the Bears, but it won't be so easy. For Trubisky, he's struggling. It won't be so easy. It won't be easy at all. So this has been the chair. We got to go here, but I'll have my Raider show and I want to do the chair, but I want to do some food reviews. The report of the week on YouTube. This guy, he's been doing videos for a long time now, but he makes these cool videos. He dresses in suits and ties, and he'll go out to any fast food place and get try the new things. So maybe I will too. Catch me on the chair for that. I don't know when I'll be signed up. Maybe tomorrow I'll make a couple of videos on food reviews. I like to eat, of course. You can see the way I look or what I'm hiding right now. So it's been the chair week 2 recap and week 3 preview predictions. I'm James, and I'll see you very soon.